Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode from the Product Coalition European Tour. I'm in Cardiff for the bonus Cardiff series, where today I'm really excited to be joined by Kurtulaj and Matthew Fitzgerald. Welcome, gents.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Great to be here. Thank you for invitation, Jay.
Absolute pleasure. Now, before we get stuck into the topic of how everyone in a strong product team should be product people first, I do need to give some thank yous. So the first thank you I need to give is to dupole.co for the introductions to all of the guests here in Cardiff. Dupole is a global online survey provider that has recently switched to a pay-for-value model, meaning you can get started with their real-time multilingual and embeddable surveys for free today. Just go to dupole.co. That's DOOPOLL.co. Now, this tour and every single episode from the tour is dedicated to raising awareness and support for the bushfire affected communities, wildlife and volunteer firefighters in Australia. So if you enjoy this show or any of the podcast episodes on the Product Coalition European Tour, please consider supporting those causes at bushfire.productcoalition.com. I'm visiting 5 cities across Europe to interview over 50 product leaders like Baf and Matthew here today to gain insights, knowledge and experience to share with you, the Global Product Coalition community. And if you've just joined us, welcome. We're a community of over 500,000 readers, 6,000 Slack members and thousands of podcast listeners. Now, before we get stuck into the episode, I also need to recognise and thank some brands and individuals that have been significant donors to the causes that I've mentioned so far. UserPilot is a code-free user onboarding and adoption tool designed especially for product management teams. UserPilot helps to increase conversion, user retention rates and reduce churn by guiding new users to their first aha moment with interactive walkthroughs, contextual product tours and onboarding checklists. It allows product managers to build fully customizable, behavior-triggered in-app experiences with a simple visual editor. Go to userpilot.com to book your demo and get a free trial. Shobit Chug is the Intentional Product Manager, a Google product manager, and he helps product managers become product leaders and have careers they can be proud of. Head to intentionalproductmanager.com and sign up for Shobit's free class on the habits that turn product managers into exceptional product leaders and help them move through their careers fast. Product-led teams like Mixpanel and Flexport know that the best time to capture engagement is when a user is already inside the product. That's why they use Chameleon to drive feature adoption, build onboarding flows, and gather user feedback. You can give it a go at trychameleon.com/success. 2 other individuals I'd like to thank are Rich Mironoff and Chris Miles. Gents, we can have some fun now. Mm-hmm. So in the podcast episodes, we have an icebreaker at the start. So in Melbourne, it was a locals guide to Melbourne. In the Sydney one, it was a bit of a pub quiz. For the European tour, I've tried to go city or country specific. So the game today is called Is It Welsh or Not? All right. So first up, I'll go one each. I've got 2 products here for you. So the first one, is it Welsh or not? Powered flight. Was that invented in Wales or not?
Never heard of, so I'm not...
Powered flight, like aeroplanes?
Possibly, but I'm not so sure. I can't say for certainty.
What do you think, Matthew?
No.
No?
It wasn't.
No?
I don't think so anyway.
How come? Who do you think?
I thought it was the Wright brothers.
Yep. And so would I, to be honest, but my trusty friend, the internet, says Bill Frost, a carpenter from Saundersfoot in South Wales, was seen flying 500 yards, or 457 metres in modern money, in a plane made by himself in 1896. He patented his invention, but was too poor to renew the patent. 2 years later, the Wright brothers officially made aviation history.
Wow.
The power of patenting, even back then.
But saying that the actual intellectual property office is actually based in Wales. I can say that. So anything that is patented these days in the UK ends up in South Wales by default.
Right, okay, so technically it's all Welsh. Awesome. All right, next one is what we now know, and I'll direct this one to you, Matthew, first off. So the toaster, Welsh or not?
Oh, that's a good one. And I don't know, so I'm going to say yes, it is.
You think yes?
I would say yes.
Yeah?
It's got to be something, right, that is made in Wales.
Is it the Welsh rarebit sort of cheese on toast concept that might drive that decision?
Could be, yes, for sure.
It's the most famous toast.
It's a national dish.
Apparently not. It's Scottish. Alan McMasters, the Scotsman who invented the first electric toaster, born in Edinburgh, developed the electric toaster way back in 1893. What's interesting about that was it was invented a full 35 years before the invention of sliced bread.
Wow.
So, there you go.
It's an fascinating sort of...
All right, next up, we've got a little bit of a test on your Welsh language. Either of you speak any Welsh?
No.
No?
I'm not a Welsh speaker, but I can say my son definitely loves
There we
Welsh,
go.
and also my daughter.
Well, we'll see if you've
Picking
been
some
paying
Welsh.
attention to their Welsh linguistic studies.
I can tell you a couple of phrases, but that's about it.
All right, well, let's see if you know these ones. So first up, we've got sponken. Sponken. Now, the question here is, sorry, I forgot to introduce this bit, is did I invent that word or is it Welsh?
Invention.
You think I made sponken up?
Could well be. Maybe
You
it's
don't
the
want
way you
to
say
go
it.
for a game of sponken?
Can't.
Well, in a
connect.
world where Microsoft is and microwave is pop de ping, I think you could have very well not made that up, and it
Right,
could
okay.
be true.
You think it's true. So, Matthew, you do get a point. It's true.
Yeah.
Sponken means squash, the sport.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
There we
quite
go.
Interesting.
Right, the next one. So, did I make this up this morning, or is it a Welsh word? I've got to get my pronunciation almost sounding Welsh. Bwyc goch gota.
Probably it's a Welsh phrase,
Yeah?
but I can't.
What do you think it is?
Can't
translate
do the
it?
dots.
No?
I'm an outsider to Wales,
Bwyc
so
goch gota.
probably
Matthew?
Matthew. It's
I don't know what it means, but there's something about the goch in the middle of it that's
Yeah?
making me think it might be a real word.
Gave it away. Right, okay. You'd be right. It means ladybird. But apparently the literal translation means little red cow.
little red cow.
There we go. Okay, let's get stuck into the episode. We're going to be talking about how everyone in a strong product management team should be product people first. But before we do you mind sharing your individual product stories so far in your context of your road into product? So maybe Beth, if we could start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. My journey to product management comes through a path of software engineering path. I went to Cardiff University, did a computer science degree.
Right.
From there, obviously my career started as a software engineer, and quickly, right after that, realized that enterprise products based project that I was involved had a lot of we were building software for enterprise users, but those users were not completely using the software products in an effective way, and then gradually you quickly pick that the skills that you need to brush up on, and one of which was the other side of who we're building products for, which is the real users, understanding them, and clearly there was a need for me to then brush up those skills, and did a career break, went back to university, did a master's in business administration with product management. That gave me the holistic sort of two-sided view. And straight after that, then the companies I worked for and the roles were much suited for me to be playing on the product management side, which I've done ever since.
Right. Fantastic. And where are you now, Beth?
Right now, I founded a product first consultancy called Product Labs. In fact, Product Labs is partners with progressive companies to build a world-class product management capabilities
Right.
for digital success. And in practical terms, what that means is we help companies adopt a modern product management best practices for the new digital world we live in.
Right.
It's an initiative that has been running for several months now. Prior to that, obviously, I founded Product Tank Cardiff, which Product Tank is one of the largest product and tech communities in the world, as you probably know, Jay. And yes, it's Wales's go-to product and tech community where we all get together and talk products and how we build great products that users love using.
Awesome. I love it. And Matthew, do you mind sharing your story?
Sure. So my early career was in the military. I was a surveillance team detachment commander. Done a few tours of Iraq and Afghanistan, and then decided it's probably time to move into the private sector, de-risk my life a little bit.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So my path was similar to Bath's. I started in software engineering in a large enterprise. We were launching our capabilities in the UK, where most of the software engineering was happening overseas. It was through that process we identified a need for somebody to be the customer body within the organisation, and the role sort of progressed from there. I didn't even realise I was a product manager for the first year or two.
Right.
Following from there, I went into some startups, done a couple of loops
Really?
through there, and now I'm working for LexisNexis Risk Solutions as a senior product manager.
Awesome. Brilliant. What's exciting is I had a really good podcast recording with Anthony Murphy in Sydney, who's also the foundations of his career in the Australian military, and some really interesting insights that shaped his perception of product management as a craft and industry, and also general leadership. So really looking forward to hearing some more from you. Okay, so the topic is about in strong product teams, everyone should be product people or have a product mindset. Could you get us going, Bath? On what are your thoughts on this topic?
It's very interesting question, open question there, Jay. If you look at the progression of project management as a discipline and how long where it was in last decade versus where it is today and what is going to look like in the next 10 years, it's come a long way. As a discipline, always it's been almost like product people who were involved predominantly in the settings of large enterprises or even medium-sized companies always has been an afterthought of we have a product person in, but that role has never kind of been holistically sort of defined where the value add of that person would be. So if you look at last 10 years, it's been about product management discipline has come a long way. That is thanks to the democratization of agile methodology as a whole, delivering software, shipping software very fast to your users. Through the role of product owner. And yet, within the agile methodologies, possibly, arguably, this is my opinion, is one of the best innovations from a management innovations, possibly since early 1980s.
Right.
And why I say this is because building software, it's also that itself has come a long way, but always has been complex. It's a complex sort of multidisciplinary. So if we look at it now from a perspective of companies that want to be product-led and have seen how some of companies who potentially work within their sort of in the same marketplace, they have to readjust and readopt and create and put the product management as a discipline right at the core of what they do.
Right.
This is how I would sort of describe, the the value creation of product management, and why companies ought to really think and shift into product management, operating model. Now, that's my assessment to where we were and where we are. I think the next decade is going to be a lot more exciting about around this discipline and the value that it will create for companies as a whole. What do you think, Matthew?
I absolutely agree. So over the past couple of months, I've been doing some research into the main drivers behind product management over the last couple of years. And something which I came across which was quite surprising is that there's a study done by, I believe it was Deloitte, where they looked at the top companies listed on the American Stock Exchange, and those that have a very solid product discipline and are using things like the design thinking frameworks to develop their products have 60% higher stock value than those that don't. Right. So I think that demonstrates in its own right the value of having a good product discipline within the company it can bring.
And where do you think that needs to start for a business that, the term that's obviously coined and thrown around quite a lot, particularly in the last 12 months, is being product-led? Yes. So what for a company that's decided this morning, right, we're going to be product-led, what does that mean? What are they doing different tomorrow if that's their approach?
It's interesting that terminology is coined all the time. But what that, in my view, what that means is nothing more than putting your product at the core of what you do, and you drive everything else from there, and not the other way around. And what I mean by the other way around is you create a company, which then you bring about functions, which then each function operates total silos, and yet you have this product that you really are there to sell and service, and yet you are disjointed what the product is and what real tangible value we're creating for the end users, who in turns are paying their wages. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a mindset that needs to be shifted. And this is what actually product-led companies, this is how I would personally define through my experience of 13 years building, enterprise and consumer-based products. This is what is at stake. It's the way they operate, they've used to operate versus to how now they need to operate if they want to be still playing in those verticals.
Yes, I think there's something which you mentioned to me when we met for coffee a couple of weeks ago, where we were talking about there's a lot of buzzwords getting thrown around at the moment, innovation, digital transformation, and it's not really any of that. It's about people transformation, right? It's about educating your employees to this is your product and really understand what drives it, the core metrics at the heart of it, and teach people how to understand them. It's certainly a very good starting point to get it going.
Absolutely, and I think it's also part of why or reasons why digital transformations really fail, and they fail in 80% ranges, are purely because of that, and the fact that it's people transformation, not digital transformation. This is what I would say, and then of course products are the core of that organization. That's what they really do, and that's where the value add for the users who are using that product is or service.
Well, what would you say is the difference for where the customer sits when product's at the core versus when product isn't at the core?
Again, a product has got to be built around users' needs. Now, this is where an interesting conundrum comes in, because you have a lot of agile teams that are predominantly focused on serving the stakeholders' needs within the business and not necessarily serving their real users. And this is what I would not only, this is where you have product-centric sort of teams, which are feature teams, essentially, as opposed to saying, look, the product team and the core purpose of that product team is to serve the user's needs, and yet, of course, serving the stakeholders too is what they do, but predominantly focus on the user's needs, because if those needs are met, then you clearly increase the chances of being more successful as a company. It's very simple as that. In my experience that I've experienced in many companies and teams that I also put together and run.
So I had an interesting experience at a large enterprise I was working for. So we had a printout of the SAFE, the Scalable Agile Framework map, on the wall. And what's really interesting to do is to look at it, and you can almost play Where's Waldo with the customer in it, because you look at how some of these agile frameworks are being developed, and you think this could lead large companies astray if they're really looking at becoming product focused and then moving through digital transformation, and somebody says, hey, why don't you give a Scalable Agile Framework a try? It could really set them down the wrong path. So if they're focusing too much on the processes and all of the departments that sit around that customer, and they can gloss over it very easily. So if you could do a cut-in for the SAFE model and just have a look at it, it's certainly interesting.
Well, what I always find with those, the selling of those frameworks to organisations is the person who's paying for the framework to be implemented is also very distant from the customer, and that's why that visual diagram resonates with them so well, typically being a CFO or someone very finance driven who needs to optimize, let's say, 5,000 employees and the way things are being delivered. That diagram looks great for doing that,
absolutely does.
As opposed to someone from our world in the product space who's very customer driven, who, as you say, can play Where's Wally for the for the customer on that.
Absolutely, and it's that disconnect, isn't it? The further you are in layers detached from your customer, the less you know about that customer. So, and it's interesting because you have quite a few companies who've gone through this cycle where they only have put a very compelling case to change when they see in the stats that drones of their customers are leaving their products and switching for their competitors' products, and it's an interesting sort of situation. Some companies who really don't pay much attention on customers from very earlier on, how they find themselves completely outpaced by their competitors.
We were speaking about strong product teams, and that there's a few principles that I assume that you've come up with that you would use to recognise what a strong product team is. What sort of observations do you have on what a strong product team would look like?
My personal view on this is, again, if we lead with the premise that we are all product people in a team, and we all first and foremost understand where the cross disciplines of the roles we are responsible for in producing the outcomes of the product we build, then I think that is the basis where we all start with. Essentially, it's almost like building a home. You first have to build a foundation, and also in that, if you take a very a strong product team oriented, is made of product managers or product owner. It's made of product designers, which play a key role. But also you have the engineers who essentially build the thing. And now, if we just look at the some of the a life in a day in life of a product team. You have a lot of flavors because everything is driven by the context of the organization, the culture of that organization, but predominantly the principle that I personally have applied quite successfully is to have this shared understanding that we are all product people first. And when I was predicating this, I had some interesting insights from people, engineers coming to me and saying, "Oh, but we've never had this before. No one has put it in this sort of in those terms before." And you see that there is a sense that they want to also have this common understanding of the customer itself, understanding not only the customer, but how do as a company, how do we make money, right? How do you understand the business model, And all of these are things that a real solid product-oriented, a strong product team has to have in order to be responsible, that we understand the customers deeply and we care about them and build the right product and service around their customers' needs. I think this is a baseline model that certainly for me has had some very interesting impact. And again, I'm talking of experience. I'm not talking that I have a framework that works for all types of teams, but things like that, that you could start to apply and have this kind of common shared understanding among the team, and that dynamic is critical.
It's what's interesting as well is it never seems to amaze me how many software engineers that I speak to don't meet their customers, and they feel that their major value driver towards the business is just the code they write. And it couldn't be further from the truth. They're outstanding problem solvers. So, and it's just great when you get to pair a customer problem with a software engineer, and you're all in a room and you can have an honest and frank discussion. And you find that these are the best solutions that get built is from those sorts of meetings instead of having this daisy chain, right? It's
absolutely, and again, it's how you actually break the silos down, because a software engineer, they are incredible problem solvers, and if you break the silos down, and also upskill them to understand the business side of things, you get an amazing impact right away from the get-go. That's the value for me, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that you find the solutions are delivered far faster and they have a much larger impact than what they should have they been developed in a silo, isolated away.
For me, I mean, the ability to build empathy between the customer and the engineer gives them a reason to get up in the morning beyond the paycheck and to work with the colleagues. It sets the direction.
Absolutely, and if it is about purpose, this is it. It's got to be about that, and understand really that where you truly are making a difference, a tangible difference, is what it's all about. And it separates people who really are passionate about their crafts, as opposed to other people who just do their crafts and do it in ways that maybe does not resonate with value or good outcomes.
What are a few things that a product manager could do tomorrow to get his or her engineering or UX or whichever team it may be that they're working with closer to the customer, do you think, to get to this shared product mindset?
That is a very interesting question, and I guess it depends on the organisation in which they work. So with regulated markets, it might not be quite as straightforward as maybe is with smaller firms. So for the smaller firms, I would strongly recommend just phoning your customer, getting them in, just having a cup of tea, coffee, go to them, and just take a couple of representatives with you. It doesn't have to be a big fancy ordeal, where you bring them in and it's fanfare. It can just be a very relaxed one-to-one meeting about, just, hey, how things are going, tell us about the problems you have, which is ultimately the goal of a product team, isn't it? It's to solve problems, not write code. With the larger enterprises, it isn't quite as straightforward because obviously even in the best, there are a couple of layers which you need to go through. So some of the tactics I've employed in the past have been to look at market intelligence reports to show them just at a very, very high level, this is what is happening in the industry. Do you understand the value that we're going to be delivering by solving these problems? So instead of taking just a big bang, I've taken them into the room with the customer straight away, so they're a bit like bunny in headlights. This breaking them into the mindset that actually I'm not here just to write code, I'm here to solve problems, and just to build up that inner desire to meet the customer and build a rapport, as you say, the empathy part, to solve those problems.
Absolutely, I could not agree anymore. And in fact, in regulated environments, I work for one of the largest banks in the Middle East, running some of the critical, digital transformation projects for them. And part of what Matt also mentioned is that how critical for an engineer is to hear out how those users are crying out for very simple solutions that could be provided to them. And I had an instance myself where actually I would go and listen to the calls of customers to gather insights that really are transformative on how we bring about solutions that may not be at scale but could have that potential. And when I kind of I was in this situation where we had gathered as much requirements as possible, and it was the whole purpose of the project was also to reduce the unbound calls we were having in our call centers, and engineers that were in my team were never have ever had that opportunity to even contemplate to go and listen to what users are saying that they need, and we run this experiment whereby we got some good sample of calls, and then we played back to the team, and the team were wow, the penny dropped, and we quickly came to rectify a very very interesting problem, which was a bottleneck actually, and the customer service was suffering from it, which we turned into a solution. And I think you start from that, you start from understanding your customers, regardless to, yes, in regulated environments such as banking and financial services, it's far less able to get closer to the customers. But actually, if you apply the will and the grit to get to understand those customers better and get the real data from them, you are able to really create solutions that impact their daily lives.
Fantastic. I certainly don't think I've ever run a sort of qualitative inquiry session and brought engineers along that I've ever said that was a waste of time.
Yeah.
That everyone always learns something.
Yeah.
Even if it's about the individual in the room and what your product means to them and their life and how it's making a difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's always valuable. Always valuable. Finally, how do you go about sharing back the outcomes? So we're talking about bringing them along on the journey for building and delivering. But when you're reaching outcomes, what tactics do you use to share those back to all of the product teams to maintain that we're all pulling together and we are steering in the right direction, or not, if that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about actually focusing not necessarily on shipping, but focusing on impact. And clearly, the impact is traceable impact. As opposed to just by shipping every so often. In fact, what generally the drawback of agile methodology as a whole and the way it's applied to companies apply has created this other sides of problems, which is almost like teams become feature factories as opposed to be driven by real tangible value and impact. So this is what I would say. It's more of understanding the real customer, start from that. The team has to have a shared understanding of what that means. You build a thing the right way, and then you drive that impact. I think this would be how I would sum that up.
So yeah, some of the ways which have led teams to do exactly that in the past is not just by looking at quantitative feedback, but it's the qualitative feedback as well. So you can have these repeat sessions. When you start to set up a customer ecosystem within your business, it's very easy to track these results. And this is put all of the analytics aside to do with platform analytics. You active daily users, all of this stuff is great. But I found in my own personal experience, the best way to drive home the impact is to get them back in the room and say, this is what you've done. So we work a lot to try and counter fraud in LexisNexis. Right. And when you hear the stories come back about the things which we've managed to stop and the success stories, it really does have a profound impact on you to know that, the team built this and this is what you've done. It's like you have made the world a safer place today because of this.
That's really important. I think that comes down to the skill of storytelling as a product manager and being able to tell that story. So it moves the rest of the team off of what's on the presentation, but in their hearts.
Yeah, it's very important how you definitely tell that story and an impact through that way. And I think that needs to be done more and more and more with teams, because they also understand not only that, but also as a team you form bonds. It's a team sport after all. When you win a game as a team, you kind of take pride on winning, but also you can see what that means to the wider landscape that they operate on. So I think that's critical.
And I think we'd all agree there's nothing really that moving about staring at a dashboard and a little green line moving up the screen, right?
I mean, you can celebrate those burn down charts only so many times before it gets a little bit boring.
Yes, for sure.
Brilliant. Sure. Thanks so much, gents, for this session. It's been awesome to chat to you both and talk through this. And I'm sure the audience listening has found this valuable. I really appreciate you spending some time with me in Cardiff.
Oh, it's been great. Thank you for having me.
Jay, thank you very much, and first and foremost, thank you for doing what you do, because I think you just are doing a great job on actually putting product management out there, and equally it takes a lot of guts to do this, but also most importantly, thank you for putting Cardiff at the center of your European tour. As Cardiff is becoming a sort of hot tech bad, and I think you always are welcome to come back for more, because there are so many talented product people here in South Wales.
My pleasure, my absolute pleasure. It's been great to spend some time over here, and everyone's been awesome to me. It's been 20 years since I've been to Cardiff, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the last few days. And I also know how to ask someone for a game of squash, which in Welsh, which also always helps.
Hey, there you go. That's the
you don't make friends over salad, you make friends over squash.
That's the impact you have when you come to Wales.
Brilliant. If you've enjoyed this episode or any of the Product Coalition European Tour podcast episodes, please do remember that I'm spending this time to try and raise awareness and raise funds for the Australian bushfire affected communities, wildlife and volunteer firefighters. You can support those causes over at bushfire.productcoalition.com. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Baf. It's been great.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you all for listening. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.